Hey everyone, welcome to Hoboken Talks. Uh, we're here in the upper gallery of the museum, and this is pre-recorded, so you wouldn't be able to text in. So you're either watching it at 7 o'clock tonight or on YouTube. You can also check out on Facebook and Twitter. And this program has been running for over a year, runs every Thursday. There's been a few repeats, but not that many. And I'm so glad we're going to be doing one today. Past guests have included Dave Carney, Anthony Romano, Greg Delaquila, April Seidenzahl, April Harris Seidenzahl, I should say, Irene Sobolov. So we have been getting the la creme of Hoboken. And of course, today is no exception. We are really excited to present our interviewee today, and that's, I'll say, raconteur. I said that wrong. Well, whatever. He's here today, Bill Keller, one of my favorite Hoboken people, who doesn't actually live in Hoboken now, but he could probably tell you more about Hoboken than anyone that I know. And he's a great guy. So here we are. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
It's a delight to be here.
Yeah, we've been wanting to do this for a while, and we're so glad we have you. Many times I, make a reference to the background that we have, and we're kind of blocking it a bit, but with our big heads and bodies. But where are we? What's our background?
Well, directly behind my right shoulder is the Elks, Hoboken Elks. I've been a member of that organization for years and years and years, and it's kind of like one of the last outposts, to my mind anyway, of old time Hobokenites, and you can still go down there and argue over when things happened and similar nonsense.
Right. So when you come into Hoboken, I'm going to guess there's probably like two stops. One is the Elks, and one is Fiore's.
Fiore's, and if he's open, I stop at Cal's hot dog stand and have two of the best swamp dogs on the face of the earth.
Swamp dogs. I don't know that term, but I know where you are. So you hit Cal's first as you come into town.
Yes, sir, because I don't want to miss him. He closes shop, when it suits him.
So he has banker's hours.
You got to get him while he's there.
That's great. So tell us a little bit about growing up in Hoboken, some of the things you remember, and what time period is that?
Well, I was born in 1945, May 8th, as a matter of fact. I claim that I'm the ultimate baby boomer because that's VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. Anyway, when I grew up in Hoboken, what I remember most, there were 1 million kids. There was enough on our block to field our own football team, our own baseball team. And right around the corner, there was another group on Bloomfield Street, and they had kids of a similar age, and they could field baseball teams and football teams, and we'd have at it all the time. I remember, too, numerous businesses that aren't there anymore, which meant everybody worked. If you wanted to, you were working after World War II. And it was a fun place because restaurants and different ethnic groups had their own shops and places where you could fetch bakeries, and you could get mozzarella, you could get pizza pie. I mean, there was Helmer's if you wanted German food. It was just, you became a food snob is what you became if you grew up in Hoboken. And you go other places and say, nah, that stuff doesn't measure up. I remember one of my friends, Andy Dixon, went out to Alva, Oklahoma, and was absolutely outraged because he went into what was purportedly an Italian restaurant, and he ordered the lasagna, and he had cottage cheese in it. According to him, this was an infamita.
Sure, low-fat cottage cheese.
Absolutely, sacrilege.
Sure. We do hear that a lot, like something like pizza, which really depends so much on the ingredients, but also the local water.
Yeah.
And they say water here is excellent for pizza. So California, other places, people go, I just can't get good pizza. So that is pretty important. And food is something that really makes you connect with your community for sure. So where would you play baseball?
Well, we called it the cricket. It's now where Hoboken High has a stadium, but it wasn't a stadium then. It was like four baseball fields surrounded by a cyclone fence down there in Columbus, back of Columbus Park.
Sure. And would you have like organized games or
No, 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 no. This was we got nine guys, you got nine guys. How they determine balls or strikes, I don't even remember. Probably fist fights decided that. But they would just pick up games and you played because you love playing.
right?
And God help anybody who wasn't willing to slide. And you were marked as a sissy. You won't slide at third. You're afraid that you're gonna rip your pants. Your mother's gonna yell at you. Then you were almost banished.
But it was probably a rough field, so
Oh, there were rocks and
sliding could cause some injuries. Sure.
in fact, we would play punch ball in the basketball courts opposite AJ Demarest. And, obviously that was like asphalt, some kind of a hard surface to the basketball court out there in the park. And you were also required to slide there too. So otherwise, you just weren't measuring up.
Got it. Got it. And a little bit about your family background.
Well, my father was a doctor, lived on 8th and Garden Street, very conveniently located across the street from Branch School, where I went to grammar school. And my mother was a nurse, and we lived in the same house that my grandfather had, and my grandfather was a piano tuner and also worked at Rupert's Brewery. In addition, he made his own beer in the cellar. And for that reason, my Uncle Hans, who we all loved, never graduated high school because he would come home at lunchtime and go down to the cellar and wouldn't go back for the afternoon session. So,
So is that like a prohibition thing, or he just liked to make beer? Or,
both.
right. Gotcha. Gotcha. And tell us about leaving Hoboken for military service. Was that like a big deal?
Well, I, I, so a lot of people tell me I'm crazy, but I volunteered my draft. And it was for me, one of the most amusing days of my life. I went up to Union City where the local draft board was. And there were five guys in front of this table beleaguering some poor girl with the x-rays, which, proved beyond the shadow of a doubt that they were, not fit for service. And finally, another girl came over and said, Mister, what are you here for? I said, I want to volunteer my draft. She said, are you okay in the head? But it affects myself. That was
Gotcha. So what conflict was that?
the Vietnam.
Vietnam. Wow. Okay. Okay.
That was my anti-protest.
I got it. I got it. And did you get shipped out, or were you local, or?
I wound up being trained in Fort Knox, and first he went to Fort Dix to just be mustered in, but training took place at Fort Knox, and from there I got lucky. They sent me to Germany, not to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny. It just went down a list, and they said from A to G, you're going to Vietnam. G to Z, Germany. So lucked out.
Did you feel lucky?
Very.
Yeah. Yeah. And your background is German in a sense?
Yes. My one side of family, my mother's side, were Irish, and the other side German, and
Right.
I've really pursued that in terms of uh, culturally. I've got about a half a million books of German, not in German, but German translation. I'm a fan of German literature, but also I got that's a half million, but I got fully a million. I'm exaggerating, of course. Books by Irish authors, and when I got out of the army, uh, due to the GI Bill and money I had saved up, I was able to go to Ireland and study for a year.
Huh.
And so I have a master's degree in Anglo-Irish studies, but really what I studied was John Jameson's and Guinness.
And did you pick up some of the same cultural things when you were in Germany?
Well,
The libations.
oh well, needless to say, I mean, greatest beer in the world. I remember there was a there was a Bierstube, a bar in Vienna, in Schwabach, Germany. That's where I served, and it was a restaurant as well. And next door was the local brewery. So when they needed, you know, to resupply, all they did was call across the hey Fritz, roll roll over a barrel. They'd open up the gate, roll the barrel down. You were getting the freshest beer. I mean, this stuff was like mother's milk. It was absolutely wonderful. But Schwabach was a crazy place. It became like a neo-Nazi um, gathering place, a trouble spot. And I remember going with because I spoke a little bit of German, uh, they did not bother me if I went in there to eat. Where they might have said, no, we're too full. But if you can ask for the menu and sit down and behave, so my friend and I are sitting there, and I was bragging about this place, and I told them they have this wonderful dessert afterwards. This Bavarian pudding with strawberry on it. So above there was like an alcove, and there were some Germans up there, and they were watching TV. And it so happened it was a Tarzan movie, and the Nazis are exploiting the Africans and stealing their diamonds so that they can invade other countries, etc. And Tarzan realizes what he's up against, and we finished our dinner, and I said and these guys are glaring down at us, and every once in a while muttering curses in German. And I said to my friend Mike, we got a ixnay on the dessert because we got to get out of here. These guys are not happy with our presence. I said, and furthermore, I saw this motion picture as a kid at the Fabian Theater in Hoboken, and I know at the end they have a field phone and they ring up Adolf Hitler and they put Cheetah, the monkey, to talk to Adolf. So we don't want to be here when that happens. So we left abruptly.
Gotcha. So you put your own special Bill Keller ending on it. I like that. I like that.
Well, it was either that or, took it out with these guys who were probably better trained than we were.
Sure. And then I'm just kind of curious, when you came back to Hoboken after the Vietnam War, we always hear that, Vietnam War was not, shall we say, popular war here.
Yes.
And did you feel heat when you came back from the local population, and again, you weren't actually in the field in Vietnam, but you probably would be perceived as being part of it. And did you receive negatives?
No, I didn't. And it wasn't something that you would really crow about. You would say, oh, I served, you didn't.
Right. Gotcha.
I mean, and on our block, we lost two kids, two buddies.
Right. Right. As I remember, there weren't too many people who served who did lose their lives. Names are escaping me, but that's pretty high casualty on your block for sure.
Yeah, I know. I remember the names.
Yeah. Do you remember?
Louis Muser,
Right.
and Gerald Walker.
Okay. Yeah, Mooser was a
Yeah, with my next
had
door
a
neighbor.
store in
That's right,
Hoboken, right?
delicatessen. Yeah,
Delicatessen, and
and was two of the gentlest, quietest kids you'd ever want to meet.
right.
And two you wouldn't want to lose.
Sure, sure. No, I got it.
Could name several we could have done without, probably myself included.
Okay, okay. Maybe we'll go to some of the pictures. You assembled some great pictures, and we'll bounce off of those a little bit. So these are early photos.
Yes,
You got to give us what we're seeing and maybe a story.
the Porky Devil on the right there is me with the bow tie. I still like bow ties.
So it started then.
Yeah, and that's not my mother. That's my aunt Margaret. And when I was born, my mother, because I was a whopper,
Okay.
a big baby. My name was Humperdinck.
How many pounds do you think?
Around 9.
Okay.
And the other fellow there is my younger brother Dennis.
Okay.
That's downtown Hoboken.
Right.
At
Right.
the back of.
So what do you think? Easter because you're dressed up or something?
I'd really be guessing. I don't know.
Sure.
That's a good guess though.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And there's
Palisades Amusement Park.
right.
That's me at the helm, and my younger brother in the middle, and my older brother Carl at the end.
Ah, I
With
didn't
his-
even know you had brothers. Wow.
Oh yeah,
Wow,
oh
excellent.
yeah. All three was in the service at one time. My younger brother was in the Navy, I was in the Army, and my older brother, the last fellow there, was in the Marines.
Pretty interesting. And tell us about Palisade Amusement Park. Most people are not going to know about it.
Oh, what a crazy place! It was a lot of fun. They had a pool, and next to the pool was a casino, and they had the greatest lemonade on. It wasn't cheap at the time, but they had this lemonade. It was absolutely wonderful, and I still remember this. The pool. They had a waterfall at one end, and next to the waterfall, there was this kind of area where they had these rope mats, and people would sunbathe. And there was a fella named Sonny. His nickname was Sonny the Gomp. A Gomp is Hoboken word for big, clumsy fellow, but he was kind of a clever dude in his own way. And he's swimming around, and his girlfriend is over on a towel chewing gum and soaking up the rays. And at the time, the film The African Queen was a big deal. So Sonny swims over to the side of the pool and says to his father, Josie, get the leeches off me. Which wasn't very complimentary to
Which
the
is
pool.
a scene from the film.
That's
and
a scene from the film. Humphrey Bogart
Yeah.
and Catherine Hepburn.
Catherine Hepburn. Yes, definitely. It is like the moment in the film.
Yeah, so that's not the African Queen you're
No,
looking at.
that's the photo op
Yeah.
for Palisade Amusement Park, which no longer exists.
But they did have a boat ride, and it's one of those things like you remember tastes, and you also remember smells from your childhood.
Sure.
And for some reason, I can still remember they had this boat ride, and it circled through the park, little putt-putt, but kind of like that actually. And you manned it yourself, you putt-putted around, but needless to say, these boats were not very well maintained, and you'd have this slick of gasoline, iridescent, floating around on the top of the water. And in the summertime, that's when you would go to Palisades Park. You would get the smell of the. So if someone says Palisades Park to me,
You think
first thing I say is the smell of that gasoline
Wow.
on the water.
I love
But
it.
there was a lot of wonderful things,
Yeah.
fun things to do. The
Right.
roller
But
coaster,
you chose the gasoline.
that, and they had the miniature golf course. And I had a friend, Vinny Andrew, and you had to give, after you finished the 18 holes, you had to give the club back and give the ball back. And Vinny on the 18 hole would get it and whack it right out onto the boulevard. The guy would come out screaming and yelling. But that was half the fun of going Palisades Park is annoying somebody else.
So would your parents take you or
No,
your
no, you could
parents?
go when we were really small.
Right.
Yes.
But then at a certain point, you
Yeah,
had to
you could
take
go
a,
yourself.
you would, I guess, well, you drove at a certain point, but could
I
you,
mean, the world wasn't quite as crazy as it is now. Maybe it was, you just didn't know it. But I remember going to Yankee Stadium and Polo Grounds when I'm like 10 or 11 years old
Mhm.
by myself.
Right.
Well, with my brother,
Sure. Yeah.
but there was no problem.
Sure. Sure. Pretty interesting.
The most dangerous thing was figuring out which subway to take and get off.
Yeah. Yeah. But part of growing up too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
And now another wonderful thing about Hoboken is being, next to a city that, you know, affords all kinds of opportunity. I mean, planetariums, museums. I remember that aunt that we pointed out earlier would take us to 42nd Street, and God bless the woman, she's got to be in heaven for doing it. But she'd sit through 8,000 Three Stooges films and cartoons, to keep us monkeys amused.
Right. Right.
And I'm sure she didn't. I never met a woman yet that enjoyed the Three Stooges.
We'll have to put that question out there. Um,
That's her
okay.
again.
I love the suits.
Yep. That's got to be around Easter time. And that suit my brother has in it.
Your brother's in the middle.
He's that's my younger brother in the middle. My older brother, to on the far right.
Okay.
Off the left.
Right with the camera.
With the camera. Yeah. That, like back then, you would make a communion, and it'd be a white suit.
Right.
But immediately the day after the communion, it went to the tailor and got dyed
For the
navy
next
blue.
brother. Yeah.
Well, because now you had a suit you can wear every day. You can't wear a white suit every day.
I got it.
So
I got it.
that was another part of.
And where are we in this photo?
We're on 8th and Garden Street, in front of LaForge's liquor store, which I'm ashamed to say I frequented too often.
Okay, it was close. And who would have taken this picture, you think?
That's a good question. That I can't tell you.
Right. Was there an uncle, or I see your aunt in a lot of pictures?
Not
so-
well. She never. At this time, she wasn't married, so there
Okay.
wouldn't be that kind of an uncle.
Right. Gotcha. Okay, cool. Nice shot. Okay.
And that's Santa Claus time. That's me on the far left,
Mhm.
and my younger brother in the middle, and that's the Santa Claus at Macy's.
Okay, so Macy's in the city.
Yeah.
Made that
So
pilgrimage.
this is our answer to Gene Shepard's Christmas story.
That's right. That's right. Or David Sedaris, another author who did a great thing on Santa.
I didn't get the boot in the face. So
Okay, got
I'm
it.
happy to say.
Yes, yes. And
That's graduation day at grad school.
so what's the pen? It says confession. What's it?
Confusion.
Oh, confusion. Sorry.
There was plenty of that going on
Okay,
in
there you go.
1959.
Okay, okay. And so Brant, you're there for kind of high school or middle school or
Back then it was K to 8,
okay,
8th grade. So that's we've just finished the 8th grade and about to go on to high school.
sure,
Back then there was so many kids that you had half year graduations. If you were in the 5th grade, there was a 5A and a 5B. So some people would graduate in February and go on to high school. I wanted to go to St. Peter's Prep, and they didn't take half years, So I went to AJ Demarest for February to June. So I kind of had a head. It was kind of cheating. I had a head start on the other kids that started, algebra new.
sure,
I had Latin. You had to take Latin, and so I had the first 2 or 3 months, repeat. So
right.
I was able to shine a little bit in the beginning.
And I think, if anyone gets the opportunity to go into the schools, a school like Brant, I'm not sure when it's built. It's like before World War I. And for the most part, pretty much the same.
Oh, very, and some beautiful features too.
Yeah, staircases,
Yeah.
the lobby, and it's kind of
The
old
woodwork,
style,
the woodwork.
but all the details are there.
Yep.
and you know, you could
There's
have
a stained glass in the upstairs, uh,
auditorium,
or, uh, the balcony.
foyer type,
Yeah,
and then we should mention that here you are as a student. Where are you in this picture?
I'm over the second row,
Hmm.
all the way, the last person over to the right.
Okay,
That scrawny looking devil over
for the
there.
big ears.
With the big ears.
Okay, they don't look that big
That's
now.
unbelievable.
Okay.
Well, I hadn't been back in a long
Okay,
time.
there you go. That was in Germany, probably. Yeah. So but again, here you are as a student, but then I don't know how many years later, you're a teacher in the same school,
That's correct.
right?
Yes.
And we've had several people on this program who were students at Grant and then later became teachers,
Hmm.
which is kind of interesting.
Yep.
Tell us a little about your teaching career. Did you pretty much stick with one school, or?
Well, for a long while, I was in grad school,
Mhm.
but I started out in Denver, Hoboken High. It had changed from Demorest to Hoboken High by then. So, but somebody had seniority and wanted to move up,
Right.
and so I got sent to grad school.
Mhm.
But you adjust,
Sure.
and
Sure.
there were several different big time changes. For a while there, you taught. You had a subject to teach,
Mhm.
and you would rotate.
Right.
And then later on, you had self-contained class where you taught just about everything. And then you went back the other way,
Right.
and they started calling the school, a middle school rather than just an elementary school. And that forced you to go back and get different certifications,
Sure.
as a technicality.
Mhm.
On the positive side, one of the courses that I took was AV, and some of the pictures that I've given the museum to use uh, was the result of one of our assignments was to go around and make a slideshow along with the verbal presentation on a disc,
Mhm.
and that's your
Sure.
grade at the end of it.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
it
Those
was
probably
it,
is
it was a
great
lot of
idea.
work, but it was
Yeah.
I treasured the pictures that I took.
Mhm. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Let's go back to pictures, and
Oh, the Hoboken House.
yeah. So you kind of have almost like a bar culture history in Hoboken together. You enjoy the libation, but you enjoy the
Oh,
camaraderie.
more is what the average word for is crack, CRAIC, the carry on, the craziness, the amusement that goes along with with drinking. It can get carried too far, but this is part of where I learned my carry on, McGordy's Hoboken House. It's interesting that you brought that up about the bar culture. I was just talking about this with my wife last night, and she's from Oklahoma, a little town in Oklahoma, but she came here and she's learning new ways, and she said, "I've noticed that with guys, they don't talk about what parish or church you came from. It's what bar you drank at. That's Harry from Hagerty's or
Right. Sure.
Harry from Cane's.
Right. Right. Different peers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and bars had kind of, some of them had personalities of their own.
Mhm.
So the place that you drank at spoke as to a little bit about how you were.
Right. Or who you might find there.
That indeed.
Yes. And can you be a little more specific, which bars and the type of culture?
Well, I remember this bar
Yeah.
had all kinds of craziness in it. There was a guy named Dennis Logan who used to periodically jump into the river and have to be rescued. He'd have a couple of the libations too many, and they knew him by name. They'd say, "Hey, done it again." They'd have to go out and fetch him before he drowned down at the Battery. And anyway, once downtown on Jackson Street, they had like a fair, and they had pony rides for kids. And he was one of the people that would handle the ponies. Well, after he's done work, he gets half a snifter on, and he rode into this bar on the horse and had a beer at the counter, and then paid and left on the horse.
On the horse.
On the
so
horse.
the horse went into the bar?
With him, he had to
He
duck
had
down to
duck
get in.
down.
But I mean, it was so crazy. John Cadden, who owned the bar at the time, was sufficiently amused not to try to strangulate him.
Right.
So he had one beer and he left. So
Sure.
makes for good. I wasn't there,
Right.
so
It makes a great story.
this is yeah.
Definitely. Well, we'll take it. And what about, like, would you go to the Clanbroth House to the bar?
There was another place that bore scrutiny. There was a bartender by the name of Blackie, and he did not abide women in the bar. Now, when you went into the Clanbroth House, you could go and get a sandwich and all the rest of that. But off to the left, it was a little, just a bar. You didn't eat in there, you just drank. And he would not allow women in it. And if a woman tried to go in there, he had a starter's pistol.
Really?
Which he would take out from the drawer and point it at her and fire it. And say, get out of my bar. I mean, he was an absolute con job.
I actually remember that bartender in the 80s, and he had mellowed a little bit, so he wasn't, so by then they allowed women into the bar. So someone told him that he needed to abide by laws of the land. But it was mainly guys, for sure.
It kind of mirrored the McSorley's old ale house.
Right.
For the longest time, women weren't allowed in there.
Right.
And when they finally did let them in, there wasn't a separate bathroom. So
they were ahead of the time.
You went into the same,
right?
And if you're not privy to this change, you had several ales, and you're in doing what you have to do, and somebody comes in and says, "Hi, fellas," it's disconcerting.
It could be, depending what you did before. Yeah, I think McSorley's and the Clanbroth House were the last two holdouts for letting women into the bar area. And my father used to take me to McSorley's, and he would, tell stories and so on. And I think at the time, a woman owned McSorley's, but she would only come in after hours to count money and clean. So that's great that you mentioned McSorley's, because usually they are tied into the Clanbroth House.
I remember being in McSorley's once, and in the middle of the floor there was a stove, and that's really what provided the heat.
Yeah, potbelly stove.
And there was sawdust on the floor, and most of the servants, not the bartenders, the servants were Irish greenhorns right off the boat, and they wore these little gray jackets. And I was in there one night, and there was a guy, and he's got pages, and he's doing his he's doing a rant against what's the author's name? I can't think of his name. That wrote Howl.
Ginsberg.
He's doing this Allen Ginsberg, imitation and excoriating America and everything American, and just how and he's increasingly getting angrier because no one is paying him the least bit of attention. So he went into another. He said, "You people, you don't deserve to hear anything like this." At that point, the Irish bartender grabbed the paper out of his hand, opened the stove, shoved it in the stove, and said, "Now it's where it belongs." It was a wonderful moment for me, I can tell you that.
And excoriating, that's a word I haven't heard today. Okay. Do we have, and then we're getting from Rand, who's engineering today, where was McGordy's Hoboken House, which I meant to ask. Thank you, Rand.
10th Park.
10th Park. Yeah, definitely. Looks real classic with that tile work and the molding and so on. Is there one more bar you want to share its culture?
Oh boy, there was I can tie it in with something that we were discussing earlier. Canes.
Okay.
It was, oh no, better yet, the Wonder Bar. Eric Frobel ran the Wonder Bar. And obviously, with that name, he's German. And once in a while, my father would go down there with a couple of ducks, and he would prepare the ducks,
Oh,
and
okay.
we drink, Mosul wine, and enjoy ourselves. But we get to talking, and we found out that um, a friend of mine, uh, he's older. His name was Helmut Koshik.
Good name.
Gus Kozik was a fireman forever here in his son, uh, Helmut's son, and Richie was a policeman. Anyway, when they were little tots, uh, they had like lederhosen, the shorts
Oh, yeah.
with the suspenders, and Mr. and Mrs. Kozik would go to Frobel's, and they would, because they were mischievous, they were like the Katsunyama kids, the two of them,
Okay.
and they would hang them up on the coat hooks
With the leader
with the suspenders
Oh, man.
while I enjoyed it.
Oh, really?
Their-
You just see
their
him moving
beverage.
around? Yeah.
And later on, I tried to learn to speak German, and Mrs. Kozik, Helmut's wife, um, gave me lessons in the afternoon. And as a thank you, I invited her over to my house on 15th and Garden Street, our apartment, not a house, and for coffee and cake, which is kind of a German tradition on a Saturday. And I had a Jones for roasted rabbit. Actually, I would have preferred Hassenpfeffer, but she wasn't too keen on that. So I went up to Mosigliano's up in North Bergen and got 2 fresh killed rabbits. And she prepared, did all the stuff, put the oven on. My wife was sitting there with them there. They're having the coffee and the cake. And halfway through the discussion, she says, "Oh, I'm getting that Freudians." She says, "I must, Billy, you excuse me, I have to check on the rabbits." And she pulls out the oven, and these 2 rabbits, like in a fetal position, they're in this pan sizzling. She goes, "Oh, God in heaven, how beautiful. Just like my Richie and Gussie when they were born."
That's a nice familiar memory. You are what you eat.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so we're gonna look at some other pictures. You look so happy in that picture.
Well, playing baseball.
Yeah.
I wasn't very good at it. That's why this picture is a lie in a way, because
Yeah.
very infrequently did the ball wind up.
Okay, it's glued there.
Yeah. Anyway, we all love. I mean, somewhere along the line, football became king,
Mhm.
and
Right.
basketball.
Sure.
But back then, baseball was still.
Right. And so you're not playing on organized teams of uniforms.
I did play
or
in.
you did do that too.
There was Little League.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
Sure.
And there was I forget what the Babe Ruth League. It
Uh-huh.
was a Babe Ruth League.
Sure. Sure.
And I remember being on. I remember the team on the Gallows. Gallo was a politician
Oh yeah, right. Sure.
in Hoboken.
Right.
And he
So
had
they
a team.
would sponsor different
And the
teams.
team, the Cadillac of Little League teams at that time were the Casalinos.
Casalinos.
Mr. Casalino was a supplier of oil and
Okay.
home
So
heating
you
fuel.
were guaranteed
But he
after the game.
old and hot dogs. If you were on the gallows, you just went home.
You drank wine. No,
But
right.
it's one of my happier moments. The first year I got to play Little League baseball. I mean, you're the new kid. I mean, and people still played to win. That it wasn't like everybody's got to be happy.
Everyone's a winner.
Yeah, you want to win. So near the end of the game, last inning, the coach pushed me out in right field. We're playing the Casalinos, and we're ahead by a run. And there's 2 out, and there's a guy named Rich Salinati. He became he was with the Mighty Mikes.
Mhm.
They won like a national championship
Right.
in football.
Football.
Anyway, he was a pretty good baseball player too. And he was on first base, and he notices, you got this new guy out in right field. Somebody gets up, they whack ball over the second baseman's head. It's come to my knees are knocking, and I'm just saying, please don't let this ball go through. Well, Richie sees this, round second. He says, "The hell with it. I'm rounded third. I'm going to tie this game up." There was a fellow named Bootsy Goggins. He became a basketball player for Coach Chico in Demorest High School, and I threw the ball home, and Bootsy was huge. He picked the ball, got the ball, tagged him out, and I still remember it too. And I always will. Going into the dugout, this big guy was a couple of years older than me, going, "Way to go, kid."
Classic.
The stuff that sticks with you.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Sure.
mean,
And no gasoline smell. From
no
that.
gasoline smell
Okay.
whatsoever.
Okay, good. That's a great memory. And when you're a kid, those type of affirmations can really stick with you.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
They do. We had a lot of fun, organized sports, and just, I mean, we every day you couldn't wait till 3 o'clock came around. School was over. You went, your mother made you put on blue jeans and a pair of sneakers, so you didn't ruin your school clothes. And
Right.
see you at 5 o'clock, 5:30 when we eat. And God help you if you don't know how to hear when you're supposed to be.
Yeah. So a few more shots, I think. What's the deal in the house in the background? Yeah. So we were talking before. I believe, where are we? What are we on? Madison and Fifth?
Oh, I'm not good
Something
at the
around
street.
that. But that house is so out of character for Hoboken's building inventory.
That
on
part
the
of
right.
town. Oh,
Yeah, any place really. It looks like a Levitt house with dormers. Very suburban. And I believe that was a house that was built to house veterans from World War II, where if someone had, shall we say, shell shock or PSD, they were kind of put in the community to adapt and eventually would move back home. But there are maybe 2 or 3 of these around the city. One was down by St. Joseph's, which is, and this one is more, more west. And I'm trying to think of the third one. They've all since been torn down, but they were always interesting and so different from the rest of the town. And we did research it once, and that was their history. But they were eventually put back on the market, and people lived in them or rented them and things like that. So that's my 2 cents. So we're not in Hoboken if I see a tractor.
I'm in high school, and this is a summer job after my sophomore year. I'm at the wheel of this tractor, and the only reason this tractor existed at this place, which was Ernest Bendigni's Villa Roma. The Villa Roma is a big deal now, a big resort with cameras, and they have boxing matches there. At this time, however, it was just a place you went to relax, and the men would go out and argue over bocce ball, cursing and yelling at each other with tape measures and smoking cigars and having a little shot at it while they're playing. Anyway, the tractor was there to take the garbage to the dump.
Okay.
At which time, if you were lucky, George, the fellow in the back, would have his rifle with him and we'd shoot rats.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Are you in this picture?
I'm at the wheel.
You're at the wheel.
I'm in
Okay.
the seat.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
And the only reason that is I know my mother took this picture because she visited me while we were.
So I might have missed. Was this kind of a summer job?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you
A
get it?
dishwasher.
Do you remember how you got it?
But my good friend in high school had done it the year before. How he became knowledgeable of it, I don't know.
Sure.
But he didn't want to do it again. He said, "Yeah, call him up." I mean,
Go shoot rats. Yeah.
go shoot rats.
Right.
And there were always pretty girls at waitresses.
There we go. There we landed. Okay.
But we were too young for them.
Yeah,
so.
right.
But it was nice to be around them.
Sure. So part of the German cultural experience.
While I was in the army, you would have lots of times weekends off, and they had these little Oktoberfest kind of things periodically, and
right,
they'd set up tents and trot out the big steins, and those pretzels were delicious.
sure. And like when you were, are you in the military here? No,
Yes,
you are. You look
yeah,
so young. Yeah, but you
yeah.
have a mustache. No.
That's the yeah, and you had to keep it really clipped too. They were real nutso over there. They
Okay.
couldn't become bushy because then you would become. You starting to make me think you might try to be an individual. We don't want an
That's the
individual.
army.
That's the
Yeah.
army.
Okay.
We don't want individuals.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's a hard one to accept if you're a creative
Well,
folk
well,
in there.
keep
But
your keep your
it
mouth
seems
shut.
like once you got out, you went
Yep.
crazy.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of that Robert Goulet barbershop quartet.
Yeah.
So where are we? And what are we up to here?
We're in Dublin, Ireland. This
Ah,
is when I got out of the army and I saved up enough money loading trucks, and I taught for a while at St. Peter's College, and I had like a little treasure chest, and I was getting a certain amount of money from the VA, and so I went to Ireland, and I was getting a master's degree in Anglo-Irish literature, and want to brag a little. One of our teachers was Seamus Heaney, who was
famous, right?
famous Seamus. He won the Nobel Prize
Yeah, sure.
for literature. He was one of our teachers, and a lot of the other teachers were published authors.
Mhm.
So it was a lot of fun, and she was on a Rotary scholarship, so she had to periodically she had to go to these different places and give talks about
Gotcha.
how wonderful
And
life
where did you guys meet?
in Ireland.
You did meet
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Ireland. Wow.
yeah.
So she is of Irish descent?
Uh,
Or
she, not
any,
Irish, but
that's
American.
American
Yeah,
Irish, right?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
She's
So-
from Oklahoma.
So that's right. You said that. And
Yeah.
is she studying in Ireland? Or?
Yeah, she's still
Okay.
taking the same course I am.
Ah, I like that story.
She came back and she always wanted to teach little kids, so she went to Bank Street over in New York City
Mhm.
and got a master's degree and she became a teacher too.
Right, right. Two teachers. So
Two
didn't you have the summers off?
Well, I didn't.
You didn't?
No, I had to work.
Oh, okay.
I loaded trucks.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha.
That's
So
why I kept my
you went back in
before I became a total egghead. I realized I had what do I know how to do? Well, I know how to load a truck, so
Okay.
you don't have to be
Sure.
too brilliant to do
No,
that.
no, no. And
So
your back was okay?
yeah, and it it was good in a way. It kept you in touch with what the other half had to
Mhm.
do
Sure.
all year round.
Right, right. And okay. And moving on.
That's another shot of that's me and some Bierstuber in Schwabach.
Gotcha. And
That's when I was at St. Peter's College. I was the editor of the newspaper, the Power.
so tell us about your writing career.
Well, what writing I did, what writing I learned from my good friend Father Coleman, who was the moderator of the newspaper, and I didn't have much chance to write or that much ambition to write until I joined the Elves, and then they had this bulletin that would come out, and I would write what I called, I don't know if you can say this, but smart ass remarks.
You can
You know,
say it.
Uh,
We're set up
you
for
know,
that language. Right.
and I would get feedback, and people got a kick out of it. So I became kind of a half-baked columnist, and in the course of that, and my fondness for having a beverage now and then, I started writing these questionnaires.
Right.
It's kind of a goof.
So yeah, we can
We can
we
push
can
that
go
up.
into that. So I'm going to say that I don't know when, probably in the early 90s, before we were in this establishment, somehow we got in the mail a list of questions, and they were kind of quiz questions about really detailed things at Hoboken. And we didn't really know who wrote them. I believe it was a retired school teacher who sent them. His name is lost on me. And uh, I'm looking at some copies of those questions right now. I can just kind of hold it up. I don't know if it's going to read that well, but we'll go through some. And of course, the headline on these was a little off-putting. We weren't quite sure what we were looking at. And the title of each one of these sets of questions is the Committee on Cultural Purity Questionnaire. Cultural Purity Questionnaire. And then we took that as kind of jokesy. And do you want to talk a little bit about these questions and the title and its like the idea behind them, what you were trying to get across?
Well, at the time,
In what time period are we?
geez, I guess beginning of the 80s.
Okay.
But I'm guessing. Anyway, Hoboken's changing around this time, and there are a lot of young urban professionals moving in, and their ways are not the same as the ways of the people that are already here. Obviously, they don't know the traditions and all, and guys like me found it amusing, because some people become truly irate, and these were written tongue in cheek. I mean, they were nostalgia. That part was everybody could share, but I mean, some people kind of took these seriously, like.
So did you take heat from people? Like
No, I made sure
right.
best I could to remain anonymous. I remember sitting.
Yeah, they're not signs.
No.
And there is a comment at the end. It says, any Hobokenite spilling the beans on these essential truths will be bound and gagged and sent to Weehawken in a boxcar filled with itchy balls. I love that. So that should give people a sense
of the nonsense.
Of the nonsense. So there are answers to these questions. And I remember there were sheets with the answers. So you're kind of saying, don't spill the beans.
Right.
Give the answers to people.
Right.
Let these be questions that kind of identify, shall we say, newcomers versus old timers.
I remember sitting in the office of grad school, and Vera Rashadi was the secretary, and I'm just killing time because I got another 10 minutes to kill before my next class, and she gets a phone call. She says, "Bill, this is for you." And I take the phone and I said, "Yes." She says, "Is this Mr. Keller?" I said, "It is." She says, "I'm so and so from the Jersey Journal. We have information that you were the author of these sheets that are going around town." I said, "Absolutely bogus, not me. I don't know anything about it. Sorry, I'm very busy."
Because you could get a little blowback, someone wanted to be negative.
And plus, it never wrote it to be recognized.
Right. And
it was kind of a hoot.
Right.
And that's another reason why we never, when I say we, these were written, I mean, the stuff up above, the verbiage, the introductions I wrote. But a lot of the questions were written by fellows at a bar, right, and in the teacher's room. Right. Teacher's room was a great place for gossip. And I'd run it by people who came from certain neighborhoods. And that's why there's a nice mix of questions. All the questions are uptown questions. There are downtown questions. There are questions that people who grew up in Hoboken wouldn't have a clue how to answer because they were from a different neighborhood.
Right. Every block is their ecosystem.
Yeah.
And there were how many questions altogether, do you think?
Oh, there are 4 sheets of 40.
Right. So
that's 160.
And I think there were more.
Yes. Then had so much fun with it, I started writing in the Elks Bulletin 10 questions at a time.
Right.
With a little intro.
Sure. And there were levels, like the first, test day, first 40 questions are relatively easy,
right, for
the local knowledgeable person. But when you got into level 4, the last 40, you could maybe not, it'd be really tough.
And the shame of it is Part of what we did, we never wrote down the answers, or I never did. Said, and this ancient 77-year-old brain has deteriorated enough where a lot of the questions I couldn't answer now, even though I
Right,
could
right,
then.
right. So let's just have a fun and ask
Sure.
a couple of questions here. And, you know, you can, this is pre-recorded, but, you know, some people out there may know these answers, but we won't know if they do. So anyway, who is Gallagher?
Gallagher became legendary. He was a policeman, and he was famous for having on Garden Street, I think it was 6th and Garden, positioned himself up in a tree and leapt down out of the tree to give a guy a ticket who had gone through a stop sign.
So he's just like hiding in the tree and has a high vantage point.
Right. And so the person, if he was standing on a corner, the person would stop. But he being the clever,
sure,
sly fox that he is, he's up in a tree, you know, getting his uniform filthy for a ticket.
He's not rescuing cats. He's looking for an opportunity to score. And
like I said,
dedication.
Don't know how true the story is, but like these questions, it went around town like crazy. So even if it didn't happen, it acquired a truth
and actually perpetuated the myth. I like that. Question number 8: who were the Hillies?
The Hillies were legendary thugs that lived up in Union City that would hurl rocks down on you if you went to play too close to the Palisades. So it's probably a story that mothers made up to.
So that's why the kids would wear helmets, right?
And stay with. I remember my grandmother taking me up the path up to Jersey City to North Street, and she would start a little fire, and she had potatoes, and she'd get the coals and put the coals in a can, and the can was tied to a string, and you whirl it around, and hopefully the potato would become roasted enough to eat.
Kind of a hobo thing.
Yeah, it was goofy, but it was fun.
Yeah, definitely. Question number 14: what is Yum Yum?
Everybody in Hoboken knew that. That was
that would have been an easy one for local, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And so get a little more detailed about Yum Yum.
Well, it came in these little paper cups, and the vendor wheeled a cart around town. So you're out playing, you know, you're hot, especially during the warm months, and a cup of Yum Yum was really a big treat. And
a lot of these do single out a particular person, and so we're going to play it a little safe. But here's one. Name at least 2 Bacala brothers. And if you don't remember their names,
I don't.
Who were the Bacala? It means they're more than 2, I guess.
I tell you, that's a question that's gone completely out of my mind. But I tell you, the word Bacala, I have a story that goes with that.
Please.
I started a fishing club in grant school for one day, maybe 2 days a year. We would go out we'd take the kids down to Atlantic Highlands, get on a boat, charter the boat, and we'd have like a field trip, you know, and we'd have practice. We'd let lines down out of the windows in the school so that they would learn how not to make a bird's nest, you know, on a reel when you're letting it down. And we're looking for an amusing way something to call this club. I said, we're gonna call it the Bacala Club. And Mary Trinidadi, who was the principal at the time, says, absolutely not. I said, what's the matter? It's Bacala. It means dried codfish.
Right.
I found out later on it has other less savory meanings.
Really? Okay.
It refers to how will I put it? Unmentionable portions of the female anatomy.
Okay.
She didn't want to explain that to me, and here I am going around like,
what's the problem?
You know,
Codfish.
German Irish goofball.
Right.
Like, what's wrong with this?
Yeah.
And there it was, plain as day.
Did you have tenure? No,
I did.
Okay. Good. And the last question.
And I might add, I enjoyed bacala salad enormously. There was
Okay.
a landlady in our house that every Easter would make the salad, and
Hmm.
it was aces.
Gotcha. Um, and what was the U.S.?
Oh, that was a movie theater on Washington Street, up near where the public service building was, and I think still is.
Right, Haven Savings
Yeah.
Bank, I think, is there now.
And the interesting thing about that place is periodically, near the end of its tenure, the first couple of rows, if it rained a lot, it flooded. But they showed movies anyway. God knows what creatures were swimming around in it.
It was known for that too, I think. Yeah. Okay, so we're off the questions. Maybe do we have a few more pictures? I can't remember.
John McKnight,
Wow.
the funeral director at Fayella's.
Right.
I used to, if I had a bad day teaching on my way home to Old Bridge, I would stop at the funeral parlor
That's a real pickup.
and go in and talk to him. He is a treasury of Hoboken trivia,
Yeah.
and I would always go away refreshed, and because I laughed myself silly. One time he told me, he says, "Yeah, I just had a funeral here, and the woman was all upset. She said she wanted eyeglasses put on for her husband, you know." And I said, "Well, to tell you the truth, I don't think he needs them." He said, "I contemplated telling him, well, how about we put in the what do you call it?
Contact.
The contacts." He says, but I thought better of it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, he's at 6th and Willow.
Yeah.
And I'll always see him out on the street, and many times he'd be carrying a garment to the dry cleaner, and I knew what it was for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd go, oh, it's kind of stark. And
But he with that
he had
slick
a
back
great
hair,
attitude. Yeah,
slick back hair, he looks the part.
he does.
He's like something out of the Addams family.
Yeah.
He doesn't look at here because
No.
he's smiling.
Right. But he's like a ringmaster, for the funeral home.
He had my friend Jimmy Malloy working for him as a pallbearer.
The Toastmaster, Jimmy Malloy?
His son.
His son. Okay. Right.
His son. And he the way he says, "Oh, Jimmy, yes, I've had Jimmy under the mahogany several times."
For a fitting, right? Anyway, okay. Well, you guys look really happy there, and those were happy days of the St. Patrick's
Yeah,
Day parade.
before the drunks ruined it.
Yeah, basically that is what ruined it. Yeah, but it was,
I mean, you really couldn't blame him for stopping it. I mean, it was some of the behavior was really getting. I mean, throwing stuff down from fire escapes.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess I think that started in 1986. The Cunning family, were the principals behind it. And I can't remember when it ended. It was under Mayor Don Zimmer. So it's probably 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's that long, but, maybe.
That was a lot. It was a shame because it was a lot of fun.
Right. The parade was great, but the aftermath was a mess.
Yep.
So one of those things.
I couldn't blame him.
Yep. And one of our favorite streets, and actually right behind another funeral home, I think.
Yeah.
Right, Bosworth. I mean, which Lawton Terso. Thank you. To the right, that's their garage. And and we see funeral parking sign too. Yeah. So,
and as you pointed out to me once, along this same stretch, there was the Hoodsonian Club, which my grandfather was the president of.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Do you have his uniform? Or
I don't have it. I have just a little fob, a watch chain fob.
Sure. That was a German, principally German club.
Yeah.
That fencing was their main activity.
Well, not really.
And
there was precious little fencing.
Well, they had the equipment if they wanted to. And I remember they had this room in there. It was like
It was
like a little closet, which suppose they locked up a fencer if he had drank too much, and they thought it would be dangerous with a foil. So it was sort of like the, timeout room for Hudsonians. Anyway,
Yeah, the German word for the place was the boy.
I didn't know that.
The boy. Well, exactly what that
Say it
means.
again louder.
Der boy.
Oh, wow. Okay, I like the
I'll
way
have
you
to
say it,
go. I'll
too.
have to go look that
Yeah,
up.
that was the most amazing interior in Hoboken. Did you ever go in there as a
No,
kid?
and I kicked myself for not.
Yeah,
I mean,
because they were a little secretive in a way.
yeah.
Yeah.
But if I suppose if I went down there, my grandfather was there,
Yeah, sure.
they might have given me a peek.
Yeah, definitely. They probably
And,
would have
and
tried to
it,
initiate.
it was like a party room, I guess you would
Yep,
call it,
yep, yep.
with a bar.
And they used to hold wakes there
Oh,
for
really?
deceased Hudsonites. We have
Oh, I didn't
pictures
know
of
that.
an open casket. They're in the uniform, and then there'd be a ceremony where they break their foil, symbolic that it was all over. Yeah.
So speaking of funeral,
Yeah.
a favorite story of mine regarding funerals. The, at Fayela's, a friend of mine, fellow teachers, at a funeral, and the person was in hell. And they also have a ceremony that they go through when
Sure.
an elk passes. And one part of the ceremony is they take out a list, they read some names, they're present, and then they come to the deceased, and they read his name 3 times.
No answer.
And
Yeah.
he does not answer. He does not answer. And the fella next to me, he's always says, "Yeah, and if he does, I'm out of here." Death and humor seem to go
Yes,
together.
definitely.
As Samuel Beckett knew so well.
Yeah, for writers, gallows humor and the Irish tradition.
Oh, God.
Right?
Finnegan's Wake.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
He comes back.
Is that what it's about? No. It's so complicated, that book.
No, the song I'm talking about.
Oh, the song. Okay. Oh, Finnegan's Wake. I was thinking you listened.
Finnegan is a hard carrier, and he falls down, and they all think he's dead.
Okay.
And they lay him out. And back then, you didn't go to a funeral parlor. You had
They didn't have a house.
So they have this hula party, send off.
Sure.
And somebody gets rowdy, and somebody punches somebody, and somebody throws a whiskey bottle. The whiskey bottle falls on Finnegan, and that revives him.
Oh,
He
so
wakes
he
up.
did answer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Molly McKee, do you think I'm dead?
Thank you.
leave it to James Joyce to seize upon something like that.
Right. No, that's wow. I should have taken that class. Yeah. So Clambroth House, legendary place. We talked about it a little bit.
Yeah.
Special bartender and the starter.
So many people who maybe passed through Hoboken once remember that sign.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, one of my big regrets is that we didn't save that sign. It came down. It was in a parking garage. It was like 2 stories, so it was a biggie. But I was busy with things and didn't pursue it. And then I heard it just rusted out, and they threw it out. There is still the finger on the roof of the building on Newark Street. So we have one, but that was the mother lode sign, shall we say.
They had the greatest sandwiches there. I remember there was a little Puerto Rican guy. He was so small, he had to stand up like a board in this milk box. And he stood at this carving station, and he had a pile of rye bread, and he had corned beef and roast beef, and he sliced. And if it was the roast beef, he had a thing of gravy, dipped it in the gravy. Oh, those sandwiches were absolutely marvelous.
You painted a good picture. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So again, Court Street, nice architecture. You can hear I always joke when I go on Court Street like this, you can hear the click clock of the hoofs of the horses on the cobblestone. It wouldn't take much, right?
Yeah, and that's the same street that Marlon Brando's brother gets hung up by the longshoreman.
Charlie. Yeah,
Charlie.
Definitely. Then that scene is shot all the way to the south.
Yeah.
Like behind the old Hudson Trust building.
Yep.
And so on. Cool. So I've actually lost track of time. Rand, can you give us a time where we're at? Okay, so we're going to move it a little faster.
Sure.
Just on that, just because you're parked in the garage. But so we have, we reference Mayor Rosetti many times. This was the cover of the Daily News What do you remember about Mayor Rosetti?
I remember he was a boisterous guy, and you either loved him or you hated him. It seemed,
Right.
and there was a guy who was billed himself as his nemesis, BB,
Oh, I
who would bust
remember him.
chops.
Oh,
Uh,
he was the most repulsive person,
and not a pleasant
visually
soul.
and what was coming out of his mouth.
But
But we wanted to show the Daily News article. That was the front page. The preceding was the front page of the Daily News. And then you had showed us this picture. So we figured we'd give equal time. So you presenting it as you loved him or hated him was the perfect comment. Because here we are, and you don't know too much about the background or the players, but what do you remember?
I certainly didn't take this picture. I wish I had, and I wish I'd been on this boat. I took this picture to a luncheon of retired teachers, and I told them what I'd been told, and that these fellows were displeased with Mayor Rossetti's policies and deals, etc. Probably because they had deals made of their own, and this upset them. So new regime, new deals. Anyway, these displeased people are on this boat, and they had this outing. I think it was the Palace, and that's the name of the boat. And they sailed and supposedly went fishing, but they made sure they had this sign. And at that time, it was purported that Vizetti lived in Marine View Plaza. Now, I took this picture and showed it to retired teachers and said, "Come up and enjoy it." And told them what I thought was the story. And I said that the fellow at the end, who has no shirt on,
Wearing the
apron, was stark naked, and because that's the story I got. And two irate teachers came up and said, "Absolutely not. I know that guy would never do something like that. And that fellow up there is my uncle." And so
yeah,
it brings to my mind something that we discussed earlier. If you're talking about Hoboken and you're on any kind of social media and you make a statement, if you're off by a scintilla, there will come down on your head abuse that you hadn't imagined possible over an incorrect address or somebody's name mispronounced.
These are the important things in life. Yeah.
These are the people who would consider these questions trivial because they have harder ones.
Okay, yeah, it could be. But I don't think Rosetti ever lived in Marine View. He owned.
That's what they told me.
Yeah,
I'm
going to be petty here and question that guy.
Oh, and people at this luncheon did too. Said that other picture where he's on that we just looked at. He's on the balcony.
Yeah.
And he says that was his friend's place.
Right.
That's taken from his friend's balcony.
Right.
He didn't live there.
Sure.
Yeah, and why would he? He had the house on 14th Street, right?
That's he owned Madison.
Yeah.
I think he lived right upstairs.
Yeah.
So I don't think he moved into that building.
I know.
I mean, he could have, but I doubt it. Anyway, great shot. We had never seen this until you brought it in.
That was given to me by a fellow teacher, Cookie Tumanero, and her husband was a policeman. Mm-hmm. And apparently he was on it.
Right. Like these days, getting a banner made is not a big deal. So a few clicks wouldn't cost that much. Back then, getting kind of a professional banner made took some doing. So this, they planned this out. And the fact that they're on this boat going up and down the Hudson River, it's like the Goodyear blimp on a boat. So they really felt strongly, for sure.
Well, hatred's a strong motivator.
Right. Hate and love are the strongest things. And think about this. This was probably done when he was mayor.
It was.
And so that's pretty in your face.
Yeah.
This is social media of the day. He's getting slammed. Anyway, okay. And so We're kind of winding down. I really want to thank you. I know we could go another hour easily, and at some point we may invite you back. Did you enjoy yourself?
Very much so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've just begun to fight. I mean, we could keep going, and I mean, we could read questions for 2 hours, and each one of these questions has a really great story. So we're going to make a few thank you comments to different funders and so on. First, want to thank Brand Hoppe for engineering the program. He's sitting a few feet from us and keeps us on track and fills in when we make a gaffe and things like that. Uh, and we will be doing a program we'll call Hoboken Walks with the Hoboken Whisperers. I'm not going to use any names on that, but that should be coming up next Thursday, hopefully. And then we'll be talking with Ruben Morales Sr., who had a career with applied companies for many years. So we're also excited about the next two programs. We also make references to people who have passed recently and have donated very heavily in estate planning. So Mel Kiernan is such a person. So we thank him dearly and his family. The New Jersey Historical Commission, a state agency, gave us money to improve our equipment here for Hoboken Talks, GOS support, special project support, many things. And then the New Jersey Council for the Humanities gave us an action grant to work on our new exhibit, which is going to deal with the Hoboken fires of the 1970s and 80s. And then we also have a special group of funders who give it a high level. That's known as the Shipyard Circle. You probably know lots of these people. We'd love you guys to become part of the Shipyard Circle. Please reach out if you need more information. And then Iron State, these are new graphics. Iron State typically was known as Applied Companies through the Barry family. It's still the Barry family, but it's Iron State. And it takes me a moment to sort of take that in. But Iron State Applied are the, our main patrons who gifted us this space that we're broadcasting from. And even though we work really hard and raise a lot of money, if it wasn't for Iron State, we probably would be on the corner of 8th and Garden doing our program. And then our current exhibit is called The Avenue. It's a history of Washington Street, and it'll be up until December 23rd. It's been one of our most popular exhibits, so hope you check it out. We will be doing a digital version and more about that later, but right now you can still see it in person, along with our current upper gallery exhibit, which is titled Unclassical Contemporary, Still Lifes by Deborah Paul. Deborah is a supreme painter. It's all still lifes. She lives in Hoboken. She has a studio in the Newman Leather Building. And this year she did receive an arts fellowship from the New Jersey Council of the Arts as one of the stand-up painters. And just so happened lives in Hoboken. So that's up until October 30th. And of course, we'd love you to sign up for YouTube. You can share the YouTube link. You can subscribe. You can make comments. And this show has become one of the keystones of the museum's programs, along with exhibits and the chapbooks and other things like that. So we are signing off. It's been fun. As I said, I wouldn't be surprised if we invite Bill next year, because we've only begun to chip away at the surface. And thank you for making my day, Bill. And safe ride home to the South Amboy area. And thanks for sharing all those great memories and pictures.